In the previous lesson, we learned how to transform our web page with CSS. Now in this lesson, we'll be able to create a function that will be able to allow users to search through each user and they will get the results. For instance, right now, if we try to search the name Odis, we don't get anything. This is where JavaScript becomes very handy. We can use JavaScript to filter our content and present to the user the very most important content that matches that very search. Alright, so let's dive into it. Working through the documentation, we're going to be using some sort of methods and function. We're going to use method like include. The include is going to be what will help us to compare whether the value that the user is searching is the same with what we have on the page. And we're also going to be using the input event, which allows us to take the input from the user and use it to compare that which we have in our repository. It is going to be an interesting one. If you need any information about any of this topic, you can come to the documentation and just read through each of this function. If you have any question, you can always leave a comment and we'll be ready to help you on that. So let's dive into it. First, to get our JavaScript running, we need to create our JavaScript file, then link it to our project and confirm that the JavaScript is properly linked. If you check the bottom of this document, you'll see the linked file, and I also have created the empty file. First, to confirm that everything is well and intact, we can say alerts. Let's just call on the alerts. We can use the alert function just to make sure that everything is working. So we can just say hello, and if we save it and go to our web page, you should be able to see a dialog box. Let's reload it. You can see what we have, which is cool. Now that we are sure that the JavaScript is linked, what we need to do right now is to perform the magic. And let's see the step by step how we can do that. First, we need to target all the employee on our web page. All this container, we need to target all of them. Remember, we are going to be looping through all of them, checking if a user exists in that container. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to declare my first constant variable, which we can give it employee. Let's just say const, and we're going to give it employee. Then we want to use query selector to select all of the employee class. So we can just say document query selector all. Then we want the class of employee. Cool. So now that we have that targeted, let's declare our first function. Okay, so the function is what we are going to trigger whenever there's a content, whenever the user tries to search. The function will be called each time there is an input. So let's check it out. So let's declare a function called const function. We can say display employees. Okay. So we're going to have a parameter, then have the arrow function. We want to give our parameter a value or an identifier called value. You can give it any name, but I just choose to use values. Now, once we have this function, we need to perform a task on each of the employee container. Remember, we need to perform a task on each of the employee container. So which means that a for loop is going to be something that we will use, and the for each loop will really be a very handy instrument in creating this function. So we're going to say employee, this, employee, then call on the for each loop. When we call on the for each loop, then let's save the events. We can give it elements. Then let's declare another function. What we need to be able to do now is to save every item for each of the elements. You know, every employee carries a name, job type, and position. We need to be able to save those variables so that those are the things we will then use later to query our search and display the appropriate data or appropriate user to whoever is searching. So let's see how it works. So first, we need a name, constant, name. It's going to be equals to element, which is this element here, the children. Now let's look at the position of the name. Remember, we are targeting this, then we are saying the children in this container. And if you look at the counting, the image will fall under 0 because it's the index of 0. The name is going to be 1. So let's see how that works. We're just going to say 1. Then what we want is the inner HTML. That's the content in it, the name of the user, the name. So we're going to say inner HTML. One more thing, we need to change the text to uppercase, all of them. So we can just say to uppercase. It's a function. So let's just close it. Then we need the position. So we can just even duplicate this. Say position. This is going to be 2. Then we need the third one, which is going to be job type. Going to be position 3. Okay, so now for each of the container or each of the user, we're able to target and store the name, position, and job type. Let's look at the next thing we need to do. What we need to do right now is to be able to say if the user name matches the search, then display the user. And how can we do that? Let's use the if statement. To use the if statement, let's just space a bit. We can just say if. Okay, so let's set our condition. Now we want if the name is equals to the user search. Here we need to use the include method. So let's call on the name variable that we saved. If the name includes whatever value is coming, so let's just say values. Okay, if the name includes whatever value is coming, or let's have the or operator. Let's copy the same thing as well. If the position, okay, I think we should remove this bracket. Yes. The last thing we need to check is if the job type. So we can just say job type. If all this thing, if either of them contain the value in the search, we want to display the user. And what we need to do is to display the user. And we can just say elements, which is the actual user or employee. We can just say elements, then star display. Then we can give it block. Let's save it and try to do something. Let's see if it works. Nothing really works. Nothing works. And let's see why. So first, we need to be able to hide all of the users each time the search comments. And one way we can do that is to say display none. to every of the elements at the beginning of the search. So we can just say display none. And if you come here to search, nothing is still happening yet. And it's because we haven't even called the event listener yet. For us to call the event, let's look at what we have on the search. Let's look for our input. So this is the input. And we have the ID of search employee. So let's reference this ID. We're just going to say ID. Then we want to add event listener. We want input. Whenever there's an input, we want to be able to store the event. Let's have the event. Then let's have our arrow function. Now we want to call the display function. So let's just copy this. We are calling the display function, but let's send a value into the function. So we're going to call this E, which is going to be E target, E period target. Then we want the value. This is how to extract value from an input. Then we want to change it to uppercase. The reason why we are changing it to uppercase includes is case sensitive. You can see that we are changing all the names to uppercase already. Then we need to change the value coming into the function to uppercase, so that when we are comparing it, there won't be any conflicts. So let's just say to uppercase, which is going to be a function as well. So let's check and see. Let's say we're looking for this. You can see already we have something showing, which is really cool. And if we try to delete, it works. If we come again and search, let's say we want to search for a psychologist. You can see psychology, even before we finish typing it. Let's say we want to search for Ruth. Ruth, this is working perfectly. And that's how easy it is to actually create a simple search feature with JavaScript. And that's how we wrap it up for this one. If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media so you can be notified each time we release a new update. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.